Well, let's talk about airplane and helicopter motor sizes. It's well known that bigger helicopters are easier to fly than the small ones. You know, coaxials don't count as they're very easy to fly for anyone. But bigger airplanes are the same, more stable and easier to see. The more mass, more weight, more power, and more visibility is a big help in windy flying. So unless you intend to remain an armchair pilot the rest of your life, you need to look at some bigger stuff. So what is bigger anyway? Well, if you can shut the motor or engine down 500 feet high and fly a long time, then you're probably not flying a foamy. Foamies tend to drop out of the sky and be very well slowed down by the wind. Well, here's how I categorize my motor sizes and the planes or helis to match them. Hope this helps. You know, the size of the helis and planes were easy to figure out in the good old days when we used to use common sense numbers. For example, I did all the beta testing for the Real Flight's first RC simulator. The helicopter was a clone of the Concept 30 from Kyosho. Well, you know, you can see my upcoming video where I'll actually fly one for you. But the gas engine size, it was a Concept 30, and that meant 0.28 to 0.32 gas. So see, if it was a 40 size heli or a 60 size heli, it would have corresponding names and numbers for the engine. Wow, where did the wheel get reinvented? It's the same with the planes. The PT-40 was a 0.40 Nitro engine, and that was the plane size, PT-40. If you flew a Breedy 60, you knew you needed a 60 engine. Electric helicopters and planes today are difficult to gauge the size of the motors or engines, as there's so many different sizes. There's minis, there's micros, there's smalls, there's mediums, and there's large. Well, what the heck does that all mean? This is my helicopter motor chart. It shows you what series electric motor to use for the size of the helicopter and what nitro motor to use. Of course, the way the manufacturers jumble the numbers around, this could be variable. Okay, well, what about those electric motors anyway? You know, modern technology's now got computer-controlled OUTRUNNER, and that means the outer case of the motor is the armature, and it spins the magnets instead. They're more powerful and more efficient. Well, brushed motors are inefficient, and they're used in low-end toys, so we won't be discussing those at this time. But how do we actually determine the size of the motors anyway? Well, here's how I do it. Well, brushless motors are rated by shaft size, the nose size, the weight, and the kV. It's all pretty confusing for sure. Well, kV means the number of RPMs you're going to get per volt that you put in. So in other words, a 1600 kV motor will turn 16,000 RPM on 10 volts. Wattage ratings are the amount of power it consumes. Generally, the more wattage, the more powerful the motor. Okay, let's say you've got the motor now, and you need to figure out what size speed controller to put on it. And you need to know the amperage rating, because that's what speed controllers are rated in. And in order to do that, you're going to need to know the amperage draw of the motor. Well, many manufacturers don't tell the specs, as they vary too much. But you can figure it out if you know the formula. Volts times amps equals watts. However, watts divided by amps equals volts. Confusing, huh? And you can measure it using an ammeter and doing it with instruments. However, you need the speed controller in the first place to do that. So it's kind of difficult to do. I personally like to see an international standard for the ratings on motors. Using a certain size propeller and a certain size battery, and then put the specs on so we can figure out what we need. It's going to have to come to that sooner or later, because it is getting confusing. So there's a little bit about motors and my thoughts on it. Now let's talk about something else. Range checking 2.4 gigahertz radios. You know, smaller planes actually go out of sight long before they go out of range, so the manufacturers make less sensitive receivers that will work even after going out of range, but not good for bigger planes because you can still see them. Hey folks, I got two transmitters here. They're both 2.4 gigahertz. They both use the same power output, as allowed by the FCC. So the range of the radio is pretty much the same because of the output power that it's allowed to have by law. So let's say that this line is the end of the signal. They cannot transmit any further than here. Dead zone over here. I've got my Esky 900 and my Blade 400. One Rodin blade. In the Esky 900 I've got the Exceed RC with the satellite receiver, and in the Blade 400 I got the AR6110 park flyer. Both work fine in this area. Okay, if I take this receiver and put it out here, not gonna work. Why? The signal can't reach it. Not gonna work. Not even gonna hardly work because it can't reach it. If I put the park zone receiver out there, same thing. Not gonna work. Can't. Signal doesn't get there. Now the difference is because of the satellite receiver, and this area is basically a fringe area. Signals are spurious, not as strong. You will have better luck with this receiver at that point. Okay, because it sees better. The park zone receiver in the fringe area may not work as good. It may fail safe on you. We're back here, it'll work just fine because the signal is nice and strong all the way up to that point. So, in reality, the transmitters control your range, not the receiver. Because if they're both in the zone, both going to work. And the way we used to range test everything, when I worked at Craft Systems, I built this Signature Series radio for myself with cross trims. This is elevator up here in the corner where you can actually reach it, not reaching around the sticks like they are nowadays. But we had this, we would put these in tin cans with lids on the top to adjust the power output. Now you can do that today with your transmitter. All you have to do is get a can like this. If you've got a transmitter that doesn't range check with the built-in range check, take that, get 100 feet away, good to go. Yep, it's done. And here's how I tested this to see how it works. I used a lost plane finder for this video, and when the signal was missing from my receiver, the plane finder signals. And using walkie-talkies, I can now demonstrate this for you. Okay, we're going to start transmitting here. And of course you can hear that now. Shut this off. Alright. Put the lid on. I like to walk with the transmitter antenna pointing away from me. Let's start walking. You know, there's many ways to cut a pizza, and maybe you'll disagree with this, but it works for me, it worked for us at Craft, and I feel good to fly if I can get at least 100 feet with the transmitter in the can, you know? Okay. I'm going to take the lid off. There you go, signal's back. Okay, that's how far it is, folks. I can make. Let's taste it off. You know, any kind of range test is a good idea, no matter how you do it. Anything less than say 100 feet, I wouldn't trust it. Well, that all sounds pretty logical.